Do you feel the sadness inside you? The deep sadness of a child who had to grow up too early? Something happened in your childhood that makes you feel as if you lost something you could never find again. While other children were climbing trees with their friends, riding their bikes around for hours, and teasing the neighbor's dog, you were looking after your siblings and helping the adults in the household and in the garage. You took on responsibility for the well-being of others at a very early age, even for the moods and emotions of the adults around you. You kept the peace between your parents. You learned to sense the emotional atmosphere around you long before you learned how to read a book. Sometimes you are not just sad, you are angry at them because you believe they took something valuable from your life. The chance to simply be a child. And this is exactly where the misunderstanding lies. They are innocent. They did not want to take your childhood away from you. Something very different happened. They believed in you. They perceived you as a strong person. They trusted you and therefore entrusted you with many responsibilities. This did not happen out of malice, not even out of convenience, although you really were a child who was convenient for parents. They recognized something in you that you already carried within yourself as a child. Wisdom, reason, foresight. They rewarded and praised you for it. What a well-behaved child, so mature for your age. They meant it as a compliment, and you accepted it. You learned early what you had to do to maintain that special status. But this has consequences. It leaves marks. And today, we will talk about what that costs you and what you can actually do about it. In psychology, this premature growing up is called parentification. Dr. Gregory Jerkovic, one of the leading researchers in this field, defined it as a child taking on adult emotional or practical responsibilities from adults that were never meant to be their burden. And there are two forms of it. The first is instrumental parentification. These are the practical tasks: cooking, cleaning, managing bills, taking care of younger siblings, being the person who keeps the house running. The second is emotional parentification. This is harder to recognize. It is the moment when you become your parents' therapist, their emotional support, and their peacekeeper, the person they leaned on when they should have been leaning on another adult. And it is important to understand this. Not every child does that. The issue is that a child carries a burden that was never theirs. However, the real damage is what it taught you about yourself. And this doesn't only happen in what people call broken homes. It happens in ordinary families too. For example, with a parent who is physically present but emotionally unavailable, or in a family struck by grief, illness, or financial crisis. Research by Hooper and colleagues in 2011 found that parentification occurs most often in families facing parental mental illness, substance abuse, and chronic stress. Yet most of these parents were not intentionally neglectful. Many of them were simply drowning themselves. But a drowning person will grab the one who is closest, and that was you. You were closest, you were capable, and nobody else stepped in. But what does this actually cost a child? Because the damage doesn't always look like suffering. Sometimes it looks like a really responsible kid, a really helpful kid, a kid who never causes problems. But underneath that, something essential was missing: the freedom to just be a child, the freedom to be irresponsible sometimes, to play without guilt, to have needs without feeling like a burden to others, to make mistakes without the whole family falling apart. Instead, something very different was built: hypervigilance, constantly scanning every room for problems that need to be solved, chronic anxiety, a deep fear of what happened if you stop managing everything, emotional suppression. Your feelings were never the priority, so you learned to push them down and do people-pleasing. Because love became something you had to earn through usefulness, not something you simply received. Research by Burnett and colleagues in 2009 found that parentified children later developed significantly higher rates of anxiety, depression, and difficulty forming healthy boundaries in life. You didn't just grow up fast, you skipped entire developmental stages, and those stages don't simply disappear. And this is where it gets even more difficult, because these patterns follow you. Most people don't make the connection. They know their childhood was hard, but they don't connect it to why their adult life feels the way it does. So let's connect the dots. Even today, you often attract people who need fixing because something in you is drawn to helping others. That's the role you know, and it is where you feel useful and valued. Relationships feel like responsibilities. Saying no feels physically impossible. You feel guilty when you rest, as if you do not deserve it, as if something bad will happen if you stop performing. You feel responsible for other people's emotions. If someone is struggling, it's your job to help them. You have spent so long being what others needed that you honestly don't know who you are when nobody needs anything from you. This is a pattern, a very specific, very predictable pattern that develops when a child starts carrying too much too early. So what was this maturity that everyone praised? It was survival, not growth. You were not mature. You were afraid. You learned that love meant managing other people's lives. And this is where most people get stuck. They understand what happened, but they don't know what to do with that understanding. Here's the hardest truth in this entire video. What happened to you was not your fault. You were a child. You had no choice. No child chooses this. But here is the other truth, and it is just as important. Healing is your responsibility. Nobody else can do it for you. Not your parents, because they are carrying the burdens of earlier generations themselves. Not your partners, because they had their own childhood too, whatever it may have looked like. Psychologist Dr. Lindsay Gibson, whose research focuses on emotionally immature parents, found that adult children of such parents must actively re-parent themselves in order to break the cycle. This does not mean blaming your parents. Many of them did the best they could with what they had. They truly didn't know better. It means taking control of your own life, letting go of responsibility for other people's emotions, letting go of responsibility for other people's decisions, and taking full, complete responsibility for your own. This is where healing begins. In the moment you stop waiting for someone else to fix what happened, everything begins to change. But what does healing actually look like? It means breaking the patterns, day by day, decision by decision. This is how you start. Step 1, name it. You cannot heal what you do not acknowledge. Say it out loud. I was parentified. I had to grow up too early. This is precision. Naming it gives you power over it. Step 2, grieve it. You lost something real, your childhood. Allow yourself to be sad about it. Grief is the beginning of acceptance, and it sets the course for healing. Step 3, learn your own needs. Ask yourself one simple question every day. What do I need right now? Not, what do others need? What do you need? At first, this feels selfish, but it is fundamental self-awareness, something you were never taught. Step 4, practice letting go. Other people's emotions are not your responsibility. Other people's decisions are not your burden. Research by Rotter in 1966 on the locus of control shows that people who focus on their own lives rather than controlling others' lives report significantly higher well-being and life satisfaction. Step 5, celebrate yourself. Every time you resist the urge to solve someone else's problem, every time you allow someone to sit with their own emotions, every time you put your own needs above someone else's comfort, you reclaim your life. Let's talk about the story you have been living. The old story. I have to take care of everyone. If I stop, everything will fall apart. My needs come last. That is not true. Here is the new story. I am allowed to take care of myself. Other people are capable of managing their own lives. My needs matter. For someone like you, this is revolutionary. You spent your entire childhood being needed. Now it is time to find out what you need. The most important relationship in your life is the one you have with yourself. It is never too late to give yourself the care and freedom you should have had as a child. Play more. Rest without guilt. Ask for help. Say no without explaining yourself. Let others solve their own problems. Trust them, they can handle it. Healing does not happen overnight. After all, you spent your entire life learning and reinforcing something else. But it begins with one simple change. Stop living other people's lives. Because while you are doing that, who is there to live yours? And maybe the time has come to simply be a child again. To play and laugh. To try and fall. It is never too late to have a happy childhood.